Hello and welcome to Your Therapist Needs Therapy. I usually have a nice little preamble, but it's my 100th episode, if you can believe that much. I truly cannot. And rather than be a cis white male who makes this episode a celebration of myself, I thought I would have some of my favorite guests on. And they have all been on multiple times to the podcast. So I've got returning guests, some of my favorite, most popular guests, some of my favorite humans in the world, and they all happen to be named Emily. And my neurodivergence thought that was really fun until I was like, how am I actually going to speak words out loud and make this make sense? So I think accounting for it's 100 episodes, so this is simple math for me, but accounting for 7% of the podcast are these guests. They've all been on twice and now a third time. So I have Emily LaPolice from Integrative Wellness. Emily has been on to talk about trauma-informed yoga. We've talked about religious trauma. We've talked about a bunch of stuff in the way that I sort of neurodivergently cover a lot of topics. And I will refer to her as LP, which it doesn't even make sense because the LaPolice is just the L's capitalized, but that's the shorthand in my name, or in my head, how I nickname people. Years of coaching sports has led to I need to shorten everyone's name so I can yell it from the bench quickly. So everyone gets a short nickname. Also have Emily Vandervelden, owner and operator over at Renewed Focus, who I have referred to as EVV for years. So that nickname was very easy. Vandervelden's a very cool last name and works really well, I think, for like a stadium announcer. EVV has been on the podcast talking about social media. We've been on other podcasts together, which is cool. And she and I have worked together for a lot of years, works with ADHD, works with trauma and EMDR, and is constantly learning and growing how she helps people. So, really great local therapist here in the Milwaukee area. And we have Emily, owner and operator at Era Wellness. I made a Taylor Swift joke last time you were on, but I'm assuming the Era is your initials.
It is, yeah. Actually, well, it's technically not, but yeah, it's complicated.
It's complicated. So we have Emily Alexie, who's been on the podcast talking about burnout and talking about owning a practice, and another really great practitioner, not just here in the local Milwaukee area, but also hires as employees and not uses 1099s. But has a lot of great practitioners at Era Wellness who work with her. So, Emily's, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
We are going to just rant. We're gonna talk about what's grinding our gears. It's 100 episodes. Could be a very sort of celebratory thing, and instead, I think I wanted to normalize that there's a lot going on that we could all everyone's therapist is one soapbox away from taking over a session to talk about what is bothering them. So I wanted to provide the space for some of my favorite practitioners to be able to say, hey, here's what's right under the surface for me. Here's what's grinding my gears.
Congratulations, though. I mean, we can still say that, right? We don't have to be all doom and gloom. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment, man, and a really lovely space and community that you have created. It's great. It's great. Honor to be a part of it. So congrats.
I know. I think it's hard to give ourselves credit, but I think you deserve a lot, Jeremy, just for building this. And also, I know that you say I'm an introvert. You also have brought so many people together, and I feel like it's a significant accomplishment.
Thanks. I am really bad at accepting compliments. My defense mechanism just wants to make a joke and defer, but I will sit with that. I appreciate it. It has been a weird journey, is what I will say about getting to 100 episodes. This was a very complicated solution to start a podcast that is based on having a weekly guest when I am an introvert and hate networking. The podcast was my solution to I don't like to network. And somehow it has turned into, yes, a lovely community of folks, lots of cool people I've gotten to talk to, lots of cool things I've gotten to promote and learn about. So,
yeah. Sweet. Well done. Well
done. We didn't do a ton of prep. It's a bunch of neurodivergent folks. everybody. But EBB, I know you have a topic you shared before we hit record that you were ready to talk about. So I'm going to kick it to you first. What's grinding your gears?
Among many things, one of the daily things that grinds my gears is clinical documentation. Where do I begin?
Yeah, well, let's start with
No?
saying more for people who might be tuning in who are not therapists. A quick peek behind the curtain.
Yeah. So as a therapist, there's a number of different things that are tied when we do sessions. It's not just doing a session. We need to, at least as a private practice therapist, there's billing attached to that. And then there's either an insurance claim or not, based on if you take insurance or not. And then there's also documentation that goes there. And then it turns out there is a whole industry online about how to have really good documentation. And there is this idea of needing to refer and have this very beautiful documentation for each session that highlights what we did in the session, what was observed, what is the tangible takeaway in that session? How does that tie back to the treatment plan? What are we going to be doing next? Also, if we take insurance, we need to justify why we are billing for a 90837. And we also need to always document medical necessity. Not to mention, and I would argue this is probably the most important part, is that we need to always assess for risk. So I get that one. That one, I'm like, you know what? I see the benefit of that. I see the benefit of tracking progress. But do you know what? I do not think that my clinical documentation can ever accurately grasp the depth of the work I do in a session, nor do I feel like an insurance company or truly anybody who's looking at those records needs to know the depth of what we did in a session. And so I'm often sitting in this weird place, this liminal space of, am I documenting enough, but not too much? Am I being vague, but specific? Am I targeting progress, but also not giving away too much about what we did and how that relates? Also, there's, it's TBD on whether or not we can use a person's name. How do we talk about support figures? And finally, I want to say that the recommendation for finishing up case notes is within 24 to 72 hours. 72 hours? All right, sure. 24. If I am threading this needle, I do not know how. If I'm having 5 sessions a day and also being a parent and having a life and getting trainings done and, taking care of myself, because regulation is also super important as a trauma therapist, as a person who works with neurodivergent folks. How do I do that? And then finally, I'm sorry, I just have a lot of feelings about this.
This is the nicest sounding rant I've heard in a while. You've
used lovely.
Zero swear words.
Cadence, the rhythm. It's just.
Well, thank you so much.
It's eerily soothing.
Yeah. So this last point, EVV, I really need you to let the rage out.
Go on.
Oh wow. The last point is that this is going to have a couple stages to it. This is not my final point. It made me think of another point. My brain does not, it never has, it does not efficiently think a thought and write it via keyboard. So if I'm keeping electronic health records, it takes a lot, even if I have my Adderall, even if I am in my prime executive functioning zone, it takes so much mental energy for me to take what happened and titrate everything that happened in that session and put it into a documentation that feels like it would check the boxes for insurance reimbursement. And so that is something that personally, I just don't have the spoons for sometimes, especially doing deep trauma work. I sometimes need to just get myself reset to be able to hold space for the next person coming in. And so we get into, okay, what are the options here? And one of the options is AI. AI can listen to a session and put together this great documentation. However, I mean, we might not want to use AI because who knows? We might run into, confidentiality issues and always review. And it does truly feel like what maybe started as a way to ethically track sessions and ethically monitor someone's progress has become a freaking minefield and a time suck.
Yeah.
I tell you, the biggest stressor being a therapist is documentation for me.
And then everyone else can chime in here, but I would say it comes up. Well, I don't take insurance anymore, but my 16 years of doing therapy, less than once a year has documentation been important for the client themselves.
Oh,
It has always been a credentialing thing for me, or an insurance thing, or reimbursement thing. It has very rarely ever been helpful in any way, shape, or form for the client that I am helping.
Right. Yes, I think that's an excellent point, and I've thought of this recently myself. I used to work initially, for systems and larger organizations, hospital systems, school systems, where it was just like non-negotiable. Like I had to document the crap out of everything. Working in psychiatric inpatient units, having my notes subpoenaed for custody battles, and it created this constant state of hypervigilance, and as you've already mentioned, EVV. I want to say EVVO. What's that? Extra virgin olive oil? EVO. What do I call it?
EVO. EVOO.
EVOO. That's right. Olive oil. Okay. But yeah, when we can kind of, and certainly earlier in my career and when I didn't have a choice, it just was so hardwired into how I practiced, and it's been this sort of untethering for me over the past several years of kind of asking that question, like, who is this serving? Who is this serving? Right? Like these notes. And even if it was like, does it help me kind of keep track? Like, no, actually. Like, do I ever look at them? No, I never look at them. I'm never
Not
looking at them.
ever.
Like to go back 3 months, like, no, right? And then so then you can kind of keep zooming out, right? And sort of like, so what is that? Like that energy, as you said, that suck that it's sucking from us as full-time working parents, as neurodivergent humans, as whatever, it's like, wow, all of that energy making the thought in my brain come out of my fingertips to my keyboard, that whole process is just going into the void. It's just like, where is it going, right? And who is it serving? And if we think of it, I carry Indigenous ancestry and always try to take an Indigenous kind of way of being lens to things. Like we're trying to offer, medicine, but not in the Western sense, but in this like healing sense. Like that's medicine, right? Like the good medicine of being with a person, looking at their eyes, connecting with them, not having a clipboard in front of us, doing the deeper relational work that is required, certainly in trauma healing. And then it's like, well, what's getting in the way of that medicine? If we're hypervigilant and like, oh, fuck, like Blue Cross Blue Shield isn't gonna blah, 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 like we're not able to even like effectively administer the medicine. And again, I'm saying that in a non-psychopharmacological framework, more in a Indigenous framework, but yeah, man, I get it. It's tough.
Well, and I think not only that, but I'm an LMFT, so a lot of my billing codes when I worked at an agency or when I took insurance was 9847s, and that's before our lives were run by algorithms on the internet. I was aware of the algorithms the insurance companies used because most of them would start denying claims at 6 or 8 sessions. And for anyone who does couple work, that sounds preposterous because there are times where you've made a lot of progress in 6 or 8 sessions, and there are times where you're just getting to the thing you need to be working on at 8 sessions. When I was in my training, there was a joke that like 7 sessions, you're either done or you're just getting started. Like, and that's sort of how couples go. So this idea that like some kid who hasn't finished their bachelor's, who's working for Anthem or United Healthcare or whomever, is gonna sit on the phone with me and go over my treatment plan and tell me why it's not relevant or why they're only gonna verify for 2 more sessions. Like, nah, A, I don't get paid for that, and B, like they're wrong, you know? So I think for people who haven't experienced to understand, for those of us bleeding hearts who have gotten into a helping profession, to then have the bureaucratic dead end that is an insurance claim that we're fighting on our clients' behalf so that they don't have to, just so they can get the help that they want, is like, yeah, I don't know. It's a moral injury that we just like bake into the process. And EVV, you brought up AI, but I would argue even without bringing AI into it, there's a major concern about documentation for client confidentiality for anyone who sees trans, non-binary, or gender expansive folks. Like, my documentation over the years has become less and less and less in what details I share. They're very generic, and it's from my perspective to protect the client's confidentiality, because I don't know at what point Simple Practice is going to get subpoenaed, or an insurance company is going to hand over everything to RFK because he wants to make a list of everybody who's autistic, or, you know, like it's become that worry where I think with politics and people who are not mental health providers getting their fingers into mental health information, I've just become very wary on what I document and why, from the perspective of like what is most helpful for the client.
It feels so disempowering. As we sit and talk about this, I can just feel in my body just this weight and this grief and this sadness of, and like you said, LP, like, who is this serving and what is the point and how do we deliver this healing medicine? And yet at the same time, economically, and some folks need to use their insurance and they need to access that care. And how do I think it just feels very sad, because I think that the way that the system structures power, I think as a provider feel very disempowered quite a bit.
Yeah. I offer clinical supervision as well. And one of my mentees or supervisees, or all those are colonized words of just like, oh, somebody's hierarchically blah, blah, blah. But, we spent an entire session, I think recently, with me providing some support for her around all of this. She had got to a breaking point, doing incredible, she's up in Canada, incredible trauma work, embodiment work. She's also trained in the trauma sensitive yoga that I offer, and IFS, internal family systems. Like, she's doing like deep work. And she got to a breaking point. She was like, I am so behind in my notes. How do I get out of this hole? And it was preventing her from doing the work, from quote unquote delivering the medicine. And we had to really brainstorm. I was like, all right, girl, here we go. We're going to do this. Get a couple of phrases. You're going to cut and paste the crap out of this, and it's going to be okay. And we're going to go for it, but it was like, yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I have like 15 sentences I pick and choose from to like sort of construct my notes that are, this is accurate for what we talked about without oversharing any detail that I wouldn't want a tyrannical government body to get a hold of.
Yeah, it's true.
Most of my note now that all of my employees use is either checkboxes or like drop downs that they choose from, because I don't want a ton of subjective information that I don't know who's going to eventually read that. So it's all pretty standardized and streamlined, and it does make it a lot quicker. And, like you said, Jeremy, like you don't know who's eventually going to read it or what at some point is going to be dangerous for somebody to know.
And I think, anybody out there who's like, oh, but our clients, like, again, 16 years of therapy, there's not been a single case other than an insurance claim that I haven't been able to write a letter in support of my client that did everything that I needed to do to advocate for them the way that I wanted to. People don't need progress notes. They just need to hear from the professional.
Yeah, totally. Yes. The amount of certainly written letters and just a, clinical summary, right? Couple sentences, began treatment here or whatever, like that, that is, yeah. But, myself, I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker here in Massachusetts. But how we were even taught in my MSW program at NYU was to do process recordings. I don't know if y'all had to do that, but like we had to write down every single sentence that we said. Every single blah, 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 blah. And it was like therapist, client, pages of these process recordings. And then our supervisor had to review them and look and do this whole thing, right? And then so that was really hard to unlearn, to kind of like unlearn that and to kind of step back and like, okay, hold on, like who's big brothering this? Like what is this like ultimate right. who, and so it's a really I love that you brought this forward, EVV, and I'm a huge connector and weaver of just like bigger themes, right? But it's like, how can we decolonize mental health? Mm-hmm. How can we decolonize mental health? Oh, like, and it's decolonizing. It's never nothing is ever decolonized. ED. We for those who are open and curious, it's a constant state of decolonizing, and like that's all colonization right there, around here's how you have to do it, and it has to go through this, and you can get treatment and you can heal and you can't, you have insurance, you have money, you can pay out of pocket, you can't, it's all gatekeeping, it's all, who are we documenting for? This isn't how things were done. This isn't how things are done even currently in Native and Indigenous communities, where folks are gathering around fires and healing through ritual and, doing so many other forms of healing. And so I think it's just, no matter where, the populations and systems that we're operating in, I think it could be a helpful just kind of mantra, even for ourselves, like how can this be decolonized in any way, shape, or form, even when we do still have to operate within the systems that we're working in, and I still do take insurance. It's a fucking headache, man. But, I still do it so that folks who, can't pay me $200 a pop can still be seen. But, I don't know, we can maybe find some middle ground, at least for ourselves as clinicians, so that we're taking care of ourselves. Like you said, EVV, it's just like the energy suck. And then who's getting that? Who, like, that's mine, man. That is my energy. That is my spirit. That is my work. You can't have it, big brother, whoever you are. So
RFK Jr.
No, he definitely can't have it.
We could have probably done a bingo card of what's going to come up here and like been checking off like decolonizing. Jeremy's complaining about capitalism. RFK comes up,
it's a whole series.
Yeah, EVV.
100 more episodes.
Yeah.
You just planned your next 100 episodes. Congrats.
I did have a moment of like, yeah, this is why I titled the podcast what I did, because I'm just like having such a reaction to this conversation of like, oh yeah, yep, this is why I have my own therapist too. LP, what's grinding your gears?
Didn't I shared enough there, didn't I?
It was beautiful and amazing.
Oh, thanks, EVOO. I really I gotta add those extra OOs. Extra virgin olive oil.
I am Italian, so.
Are you okay? I guess I was like picking up on something. I got a little Italian blood too. Goodness gracious, what's grinding my gears? You know, I do tend to sometimes take that more macro lens, but it's a constant oscillation, I guess, from the micro to the macro. But I don't know. I mean, ever since I personally have been gifted with just really stepping into more indigenous ways of being and frameworks, and it's almost like once, for me at least, and I've had other folks, say similar, that it's almost like once you see through that kind of lens or way of being, like you can't unsee it. I don't want to unsee it, but like, so some folks might or whatever. But it's kind of like now, and even when I've been a trauma therapist for 20 years, and when you take that trauma informed or trauma sensitive, trauma whatever kind of lens, you can't unsee it, right? You kind of are like, oh, everything's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's trauma. The different forms and different systemic and all of it, but like everything's trauma. And then you can look at that big book of diagnostic blah blah blah, statistical blah blah blah. As you already know, Jeremy, it's currently propping up my screen. It's still propping up my screen. That's the only thing I use it for these days. But it's like all trauma, right? So I think for me lately, as I just see and hear, headline after headline, and just the fucking sadness, like the pain, the harm is not even, like, harm doesn't even do it, right? Like what this administration, and it's only May, it's just like harm, it's so much more than that. It's, I don't even know if anybody has a word for what it is happening, but what sometimes like just catches my breath a little bit is like how simple it could be if folks could hold complexity. And like, I did a whole, I think probably our last podcast was a lot on that, but this inability to hold complexity, this inability to hold more than one truth in quotation marks, because what the fuck is truth? Whose truth? Right? And this just, it's like an endemic. I feel like it's an endemic of not being able to hold complexity. And then just this othering is not even the word either. That used to be a word, right? Othering. And sure, there is still that othering, but it's so pervasive and harmful, and genocidal, this othering, that almost feels like a fluff word. But that general sense that other or different is bad or wrong, and how deeply baked in. And this, like, I think I was with a client the other day, and I'm sure, Jeremy, on some of our episodes, we probably like made up, I don't know, 6 words or something. I like to like just make up words. And one of I was in a session and I was like, ooh, I got something. I got a nugget. And my client's like, ooh, what you got? What you got? You going to make up a new word? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to make up a new word right now. She's like, okay, I'm ready for it. And I don't know, maybe somebody's already said it, but this like expertitis, like just this wanting to be the expert, or to have it be one way, just to have it be one way. And like, I just kind of feel if I had to pick a common denominator, when we just take a full sweep, whatever, around the micro and macro traumas that we are experiencing, just by nature of being human, this idea of one way is really fucked. Like, it's just, and then there's like, I don't know, doctrine. Okay, there's one way. Dogma, that's one way. Dictatorship, keep going with the D's. It's just, why do we think? Why? Like, I'm so perplexed. I spent some time in Florida recently with a dear friend who's a little bit more liberally minded for sure, but it's just like, oh right, even in where we are, there's just so many different pockets of understanding and belief systems, and but why one? And could we just like open that up a little bit? It's very juvenile. Like, and if we think about it from a neurological standpoint, and I know I did a little riff on that the last episode. I forget what I said. I was like, let's take a neurocognitive, take on this like inability to hold complexity, but it is very juvenile. It's very toddler brain. It's very brainstem. Toddlers will freaking freak out if their socks aren't on right. Like, I get it, they're
So do I, but
sure, totally.
Too much neurodivergence in this topic for that example.
No, I get it. Maybe that wasn't the best way to put it. My 9-year-old son this morning, he's like, Mom, can you please put on my socks? Like, you just do it better. I have sensitive feet, is what he said. He's like, I have sensitive feet, Mom. I'm like, I know you do, honey. He's my neurodivergent son. And I'm like, absolutely, sweetheart. I will put on your socks until you're 30 if you want me to. It's no problem. But it's such a juvenile just way of being and seeing and doing, and it's just I guess it's rage, certainly, but it's like sadness. I'm so sad that it's actually not that hard, but we've got a lot of unlearning to do if we can get to a place where, we don't necessarily want to be operating from a limbic state all the time. That's not awesome. Okay. But a brainstem, come on. Like, I thought we were a little bit beyond that. And it seems that in some of the most dire places where so much harm and genocide and erasure and all of it is happening, it's toddlers. Toddlers are making the big decisions, and that is scary and really sad.
Yep. I remember, I forget where I saw it, and but the idea or the statistic was that we as a globe produce about food for 10 billion people. And when I heard that, I was like, why the fuck? Like, why is anyone hungry? Like, why is that? Like, this is a supply chain issue then. And it's like, no, because we have people with daddy issues in charge of things who want to make people who don't look or sound like them suffer because they're unhappy. Yeah, that's
totally
juvenile is a good word.
Yeah. And then, and even, I'm trying to learn a little bit more too around, I live in a very, very liberal bubble. I'm right outside Cambridge, Massachusetts, so Boston area, land of the Massachusetts people and Pawtucket tribe specifically. And, my husband's in nonprofit management and does a lot of he works for an organization called Generation Citizen, and it's action-based civics education for youth and having kids care about democracy and all that. So yeah, he, trying to learn more about that idea of not in my backyard liberals. I don't know if you guys have heard that. It was kind of new to me. Or maybe I was just late to the game, but it's we can be like, oh my gosh, we're blue and liberal over here, and we're, waving our rainbow flags and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, when you really look in, even on like the town level, right? Like, so my husband's in like town meeting, because we're still a town here in Arlington. Or Paul Revere was like from these parts. We're very like, it's we have like a town meeting and people come in with little fifes or something. But there is a huge like uproar right now around zoning issues and trying to get more housing in Arlington, and like maybe having some areas be zoned for like 2-family houses. And it's like, God forbid, like we have more housing, and like, it just, I don't know, I'm not even doing it justice, but it's like, it's insane to me. Well, no, our streets will be too crowded. Our streets there'll be nowhere to park. And our sewers will be, just too much strain on the sewers, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, wow, okay, so we all really want to just live up on our hills with our fences, and just fucking go about our days, but like, not in my backyard, kind of thing.
And also feel very, very good about themselves.
Yeah. Let's have people be unhoused so we have enough parking spaces.
Right. But we do think the right things. So
I find I get a lot of people, liberal leaning folks, when I start, I'll say dudes, I'll say cis males, who are, when I talk about like, we should close every golf course and just put affordable housing on it. It is a drain on the environment. It puts a bunch of toxic shit into the waterways, and it's very unnecessary use of space. And I don't get a lot of people who are on board with that. Golf, our recreational
That's shocking,
is too
Jeremy.
important for housing people.
This is a brilliant idea, though. Or could we like give back to the natives, to the indigenous people? How about that? Give the golf courses back so that they can rehabilitate the earth and like let it live again. That would actually benefit all of us, but we don't see it that way. I fucking hate golf courses, man. Every time I drive by them, I'm just like, it's just.
I worked on one. That was my summer job in high school and college, and
didn't I ruin that job for you the last time we talked?
Maybe.
Yeah, because you got overtime when you worked a certain amount of hours, and I asked you why you thought you were worth more once you had exhausted yourself.
Yeah. That's not the only ruining component of that job. At a private course that I think was like $75,000 a year just to be a member.
Sure.
Anyway, no black people in Menominee Falls. For the Wisconsinites here, there were no black people there. But it was golf courses look very pretty, but again, like they're toxic. So if you have any sort of foot fungus or you have any sort of growth on your feet, warts, whatever, like you can just walk on golf course grass and that'll kill it, because it kills literally everything. Because to get the grass to look nice and react the way we want it to a ball, we just are like murdering it and like keeping it on a ventilator so it looks a certain way. Like, it is not good for the environment or healthy. It is pure aesthetics of like, doesn't this look nice, even if it is horrific. We spray painted our mulch so it looked brown. Like, there's so much of like the inside scoop on like working on ground screw on a golf course for like, none of this is actually good for the environment or for people to be like breathing in. We had to wear masks when we had our sprayers on. Like, no, it's not good.
Healthy.
It's not nature.
It's natural.
Fascinating. I mean, look where we win. We got ourselves to foot fungus and warts, and how walking on a golf course could.
I'd rant on that wasn't on my bingo card to be mad about golf courses.
But there are so many things to be mad about.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not even getting it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, UVV.
Thinking about trauma work and thinking about all or nothing thinking, it makes me think about the states of activation that our vagus nerve sends us through. And when you were talking LP, I was thinking about how the environments in which we live keep us often in a chronic state of all or nothing thinking, just by nature of where our body is activated because of our life. And it really underscores for me like more of that calling as a therapist of being pulled to healing someone so that they can ripple out their healing and help shift the perspectives of others, or even help them shift how they treat, an employee at the next restaurant they go to. Or if they're in a position of power, they have more empathy because they've been able to step back from that sympathetic activation. And so once again, it's like, how can mental health be destigmatized and accessible? How can we put this into schools? How can we teach people how to regulate?
Yes. No, I love that. And yeah, thanks for helping us get away from the foot fungus, vortex that we were about to fall into. Like 9 iron, the whole thing. I love that, and kind of almost centering us too, like the four of us here, and like why we're brought to this work and why it matters, and how we can continue to be committed to destigmatizing mental health, decolonizing mental health, making it more accessible, taking down barriers, because our lives like literally depend upon it. It isn't just wouldn't that be nice to like, sit down on a couch and tell some white dude how, like, what happened in my childhood and that it's all my mother's fault or whatever. Like we all need healing. Like we really need healing, individually and as a culture, and all of it. But that constant limbic activation, and othering and being afraid, it's so fear-based, right? We're afraid of what's different. We're afraid of, that's not the way. This is the way. That's not the way. So it is this real fear conditioning, and helping folks, like you said, that rippling. I mean, I love that, and that's a big pillar of my work too. And the ripples, like they really do extend. Like they really do. Even just how we show up, for each other, and when we can be kind of more embodied, and there's all the neuroscience too, that you can, the insular cortex and interoception and all that kind of stuff, where it's just like, oh, right, like we're connected to our bodies and to ourselves and can make our own choices. And it's not about doctrine, dogma, and dictatorship, and kind of reminding our own bodies and our own nervous systems about that. But it's kind of it's hidden. It's not something that we have access to, but it's a gift. It's a gift if we can help folks access it, and then where that can go from there, just rippling. So that's why we're doing it.
Y'all are too good of people to come on and do a ranting episode. We're doing psychoeducation, and we're centering, and we're grounding.
We're trauma therapists.
Trauma therapists. Exactly. That was the brain.
Era, Emily, I need you to bring the thunder here.
Okay, if you don't want to activate people's PDA, you should not tell them, I need you to. But I do have something. Okay.
Excellent.
So I did tell you that my birthday is next week. And so I always get like a little existential reflecty around my birthday. And so I've been thinking a lot about sort of this, like, how did I get here? thing. And the intersection of that with kind of the work I'm doing now, which is less clinical work and more leading my practice, starting another business, trying to help other therapists start their businesses. And in those things, taking the things that I learned as a young clinician, a lot of which were terrible, and not doing those things to other people. Like a lot of people, even you, Jeremy, earlier were talking about how like you did not have a good experience in a group practice. And most people don't. A lot of people have really, really terrible experiences. And so it's the things of like how we're taught to be clinicians early on, and the ideas of like you're going to be paid really terrible. Like the ideas in my like MSW program were you're going to burn out, you're going to sacrifice yourself for everybody else, you're going to be paid really terribly, your hours are going to be awful. Like those are the things, those are the givens. Like you can expect those things. Like you're going to be in dangerous situations. Your safety is not guaranteed. Your safety is at risk a lot of the time, actually. Like a lot of those were like just the baseline. And then sort of like what kinds of things are acceptable as a new clinician in a practice of like being a 1099 and having no idea what that even means, of like people popping up on all the Facebook groups. And Jeremy, I know you and I talk about this a lot, of like people have no idea that they're supposed to pay quarterly taxes. And I'm like, I don't understand, guys. Like you didn't research everything before you started. That's just not the human I am. And just like how people are treated, like threats from a group practice owner, or being told you're not allowed to go somewhere else, you're not allowed to take your clients, or ownership of clients, or just like really terrible practices, people being paid terribly. The messages that people get about like getting your hours and being thankful that like somebody's going to sign off on it, or somebody like refusing to sign off on your hours because you're going to leave or you want to leave or whatever. Sort of these like setting people up to fail from the start of how do we set people up to do good work, to do trauma work, to do this deep work, to do these like life-changing magical things when you get paid terribly, your safety's at risk, it's burnout and exhaustion for no pay, like maybe you have several jobs to try to like make ends meet, like all of these things are sort of like baked into the culture of our field. And so how do we set up our field to do things differently? And obviously that's not a simple answer, but that's the thing that I've been thinking about a lot is like, if you were treated terribly as an early clinician, how are you fine with doing that to other people? If you are a therapist who should know better, how are you okay with traumatizing your employees? Like, that's not fine. You should know better.
It's so, and that's so ubiquitous, I think, in our culture of like, well, I got hit as a kid and I turned out fine.
Yeah. Or like, I had it hard, and so
you're not, because you're advocating for hitting children. So I
you don't
think
seem fine, actually. You should probably talk to somebody because you're not fine. You're really not okay.
Yeah, that like fuck you, I got mine mentality is like,
yes.
Yeah.
I had to pay student loans, so you should too. Well, how'd that go? Was it good? You liked it? No?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a totally how are we, like you said, kind of setting up let's just say the ones who are trying to deliver the medicine or trying to offer the healing opportunities, like how are we setting folks up for that? And I wonder too if like at the core of that, well, maybe not at the core of it, but here could be a layer, like still this sense of a little bit of like us and them, like you're the clinician, they're the clients, the patients, the whatever, and you're gonna have to just like, put your head down and push through it and do the hard stuff and, do the documentation, and you might get a chair thrown at you and all these kind of things. And like, yes, we're in service of those that we're working with. And I don't know, but there still is this like separation. This is, you're the clinician, you've got to do this. And if we took a little bit more of like a collective approach of like, oh, but wait, like we're but we're all experiencing the human condition right now. Like this human experiment. We're in it. How can there be room for me as the clinician, either in private practice or within a system, where my needs are important too? How I'm taking care of myself. Am I awake at night because I'm 2 years behind in progress?
Mhm.
Or like, and when it can be kind of a little bit more humanistic in how we in whatever capacity or role we are, navigating. I lately I've been feeling like that is really a direction we could try to tip the needle toward. I think particularly post, you know, Trump and everything, it's sort of like, right, like we're all affected by this. And to kind of, I've always been a sort of like atypical therapist. I'm sure not a surprise to anybody here around like,
What?
I'm going to talk about myself a little bit or kind of share like, oh my gosh, yeah, I had a perinatal loss as well. And here's how I navigated that and kind of this, and so that, I don't know, that not that that's the answer, but it's part of it, I wonder. Because yeah, how you were describing it too is like that martyrdom, like you're gonna get paid shit.
Mhm.
Is but who's gonna sign up for that? And we do need more healers and all of that.
There
So is there room
there
for
are
us? Is there room for us to heal alongside those that we work with? Can it be a collective healing?
And can it be that like we as, employers, as supervisors, as mentors, as colleagues don't treat each other like shit too? Like
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
intergenerational trauma of therapists.
right. Like we don't
When
need to add to that. The world is hard enough. Could we
it
not?
really is. When I was at an earlier private practice and really struggling with it, my sister, very, very wise, she said, I think you might be the product. And
Yeah.
that really felt true and also very sad and didn't feel like I was a human being.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that I wonder if there's something about once you get a little bit of that, you own the means of production, you start to see your employees as the product in a service sort of industry. And that can potentially pervert how you look at your business model and what's going on. Yeah, I think we have to think about that. Like, how do you,
Mhm.
we're trying to monetize something that is inherently priceless. And what happens next? Like, what do you do there?
Yeah. Well, so much EVV is bringing up Marxism, and I'm going to rant about capitalism, but like so much of it is
Welcome, Jeremy.
so much of it is like the broken system because we're not even like I'm always wary of people who put therapy on a pedestal. Like the fuck do we know? More than the average person, and also we're just people too. But like I go every semester, I get invited to a college campus to talk to fifth-year athletic training students, and part of what I talk about is like how do you make good referrals for mental health and stuff like that. But a big reason I keep getting invited back is because I call out the culture around athletic training, which is we're the first people on campus, we're the last people to leave, like we take care of all the shit, we get shit pay, we work overtime, we fill in where needed when another trainer can't make a game or whatever. And it's like, no, that sucks. Like this is your job, get paid for what you're doing and don't do other stuff or you will burn out. And like, I can think of, obviously I do religious trauma work, like that's so much of the dogma in like high control religion is like you are bad or broken, and then that becomes part of your identity of like, well, I am extra special because I am suffering to do this thing.
Mhm.
And like that becomes this baked in identity for things. And like, yeah, that's just intergenerational trauma. Like that's all that is.
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe we shouldn't do everything for profit.
What an idea.
I don't know how that'll work.
Don't you?
Man, it's almost like if we had some sort of, blueprint for not doing capitalism.
Where would we find that?
This is why I watch Star Trek every night.
This is why I read history books and read about other cultures and not patriarchal societies.
And I guess I'll just name too, like, there are Native and Indigenous communities right here, right now, on the lands that we are living in, that are trying to live in those old ways, and to not live by the capitalistic blueprint. I mean, it's really hard because, especially Native communities who have been just pushed to reservation land and, without access to so many of just the basic needs and resources that all of us take for granted every single day. But the culture is still alive. I just kind of want to do a little plug there that, we're not gone and not going anywhere. And it's a gift. That way of living is a gift. And you don't have to be Native or Indigenous or have a tribal bloodline to learn from that framework and to integrate it into even this capitalistic, patriarchal, dogmatic society that we're living in. It's actually there and it's still alive. But nobody wants to. That's like, what? No, they're not here anymore. They're gone. That's done.
Well, and so much of this.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and that's part of our history. And it's like, actually, no, we're still here.
And so much of what we're doing is nonsensical, and maybe to tie some of these pieces together, like that's what grinds my gears. That's one of the things that I get stuck on a lot, is like the frustration at, we have lots of research and evidence that says there's a better way to do housing unhomed people. There's a lot of research on how to help children be well fed and well rested and well regulated. And we're just not doing it. There are cultures that for millennia were matriarchal in nature and were not based on a scarcity mindset. And like, again, like we know these things. They're out there, they're well researched, they're backed by a ton of evidence, and we're just not doing them. And that drives me crazy to be like, there is a better system. We had my kids go to a Waldorf school, and so maybe get a little bit of a different insight on some things. There's pros and cons to that. It's not a pure plug for Waldorf, but like they had a speaker come in from one of the local tribes here in the Milwaukee area. I'm drawing a blank on which tribe it was specifically. This was back in the fall, but teaching some indigenous games to the kids. And one of the things they talk about is like, well, we're named after our mothers because, like, right, that makes sense. We take the last name of our mother because, like, that's what you can keep track of. And my son was like, Daddy, that makes way more sense, right? And it's like, yes, that does. Why are we doing it? I don't know. Like, because men have fragile egos and their feelings got hurt. I don't know. But yeah,
I mean, you do know. That's why. Yeah. That's accurate.
Right. Some of these things are just the way we're doing it is not only nonsensical, but there's a very obvious, very intuitive way that's backed by either research or, again, years of lived experience as evidence that, like, we're just not doing.
Right. Yeah. And I think in the program that the sort of like the trauma sensitive yoga program that I'm in and have you guys ever read this one, Trauma Stewardship?
I have it, but I have not read. It's one of those like I have and haven't read.
Yeah, Laura Vandernoot Lipsky, Trauma Stewardship. So yeah, an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's part of our curriculum. And so often kind of use that languaging too around like being a trauma steward, right? Like, yes, for trauma clinicians, you know, I might be a social worker, someone else might be a LMHC, all the alphabet soup, blah, blah, blah. But like, we're trauma stewards. Like we're trying to kind of pave the way, or not pave the way, but just open access and it's almost like a reminder. It's a reminder of like our inherent goodness, the healing that's available to us. And so certainly in Indigenous communities, there's, you know, being a steward of the land. But, you know, we might be able to kind of consider ourselves or this line of work as another form of stewardship, trauma stewardship, human stewardship. And like you said, Jeremy, we have all this information, but we're not doing it. And it's things like this, yay, 100th episode, that you are bringing voices together to remind folks that it's actually not that difficult. It's actually really simple. And I think that's what capitalism hates, how simple it actually is for all of us to take off our socks and shoes. I'm not going to make a foot fungus joke.
Just bring it back around.
No more foot fungus.
Well, maybe we could.
Years.
Take off our socks and shoes, find a plot of land and walk around in it and feel that connection to something far bigger than us. And do it in community, do it alongside fellow humans, therapist or not, middle class or not. Like, just can we just be humans together and walk around barefoot in the grass, kind of remember our place perhaps, and then if you really did have a foot fungus and you wanted to try to heal something, you can mosey on over to the golf course,
across the street,
kill two birds with one stone, you know?
Right. Exactly.
I just advocating for wild trespassing
Healthcare.
on golf courses. Fuck
Healthcare.
land ownership of
Free
stuff like that.
It's free healthcare.
on the golf course.
I
love that.
Laura Vandernoot-Litsky's other book is The Age of Overwhelm, which is also really good. Just plugging someone who's not on the podcast here. But Age of Overwhelm is really good too, and I think really approachable for folks who don't work in the mental health field as well. But yes, segue. Speaking of pluggables, what do y'all got coming up? Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work or work with you? Let's go in reverse. I don't want to do that because I didn't keep track. Let's say reverse order. Era Emily, let's start here.
Yeah, so
your pluggables.
My private practice is Era Wellness, so erawellnesstherapy.com, or Instagram is Era Wellness Therapy, I think. My new business venture is emilyalexie.com, or the Instagram is Emily Alexie LCSW. Nobody's ever going to know how to spell that, so Jeremy, you're going to have to put that somewhere.
It will be in the show notes.
Great, thank you. So my new business is helping neurodivergent therapists start their own private practices, because I think a lot of the business advice out there is just shitty and just doesn't work well for us. It's a lot of kind of the hustle culture, do it this one specific way. And if you don't or can't, or it just doesn't work for you, you suck and shouldn't do it. And that's not true. There are a lot of ways to be really successful in private practice, and it doesn't look a certain way. And I think a lot of the reasons that a lot of us go into private practice is because we need to do it different. And there's a lot of room for that. So helping people find a way that works for them, and structures, soft structures that work for them, and ways that really support their needs, so that they can do the good work that they want and need to do. So those are all my things. And I'm hopefully starting a podcast soon, and then
I was going to say, yeah.
If
Wellness
my
with Chair
kids stop being sick. So
announcing Emily's next podcast.
Yeah, which is going to be all about therapy and neurodivergence, because that's all of the things in the world to me right now, apparently. So
yay.
Yeah.
EVV, what you got?
I am just in awe of everything that era Emily has going on, and it is amazing, and I love it so much. That is so great. Yeah, my private practice is Renewed Focus Counseling, renewedfocuswi.com. Gosh, Jeremy, I hope I'm right on that. I think
You
I'm
are.
right.
I know it's like a
I have-
test. It's hard.
Excellent.
I've
Oh,
prepped these things.
and I was on my own, and I just hired somebody, so it's time for me to start doing some marketing. So I guess stay tuned for a social media presence. I avoid social media like the plague, so this is something I've been avoiding for a long time, but I'll get there. Right now, I'm wrapping up I'm wrapping up EMDR certification, and also what is it, like the ADHD clinical services provider certification, and yeah, really leaning into ketamine integration, and I'm getting trained in ketamine assisted EMDR and hoping to get my my therapist employee trained in that as well, so we can just keep doing the deeper work that I think neurodivergent folks need and deserve.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Very cool.
beautiful.
LP.
Beautiful. Both of you. Congratulations on all your endeavors, both of the Emilys. And I'm excited to know you and know you both and follow you and learn, and yay. Let's see. So I am integrative wellness therapies, iwtherapies.com. It's a dinosaur of a website, let me tell you. One of these days I'm gonna get
It's
her
it's very charming in its old school approach.
so old school. It makes me laugh. I have ideas to revamp that, but I'm also on Instagram. I'm trying to do that more. Emily LaPolice, I think that's my handle or whatever you want to call it. So that's you can definitely follow me there. Been pretty active on that. Let's see. I'm in the middle of delivering a trauma sensitive yoga training right now. It's a 20-hour foundational. Jeremy attended one of mine. And even though it's trauma sensitive yoga, it's really like everything that we talked about here today, and just around like how to be a trauma sensitive human and how to integrate some of these decolonizing frameworks into certainly clinical work, but just like the work of being a human. So that's happening right now. But I think we had a real high, whatever that's called, sign up thing this time. So I'm gonna run one in the summer. Sometimes summer is like crazy, but I'm gonna do one in the summer. I still have to pick the dates. I think I'm gonna kind of maybe do like one day in June. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm gonna do one in the summer, and then I do serve on two Indigenous-led, serve on the board of directors of two Indigenous-led organizations, and I'm the director of training at Move to Heal, South Dakota. And so I really love to plug the Indigenous-led organizations that I'm a part of, and there are so many ways to help and donate, to just really empower the communities themselves, to bring healing to their own communities. And so I think we need to do more of that. What I'm going to be doing, this last little thing, once a month, I think maybe I'm like broadcasting this for the first time. Once a month, I'm going to be offering a trauma sensitive yoga class. I think like on a Sunday morning or something, once a month. All proceeds are going to go to a specific organization, the Upijata Arts Community in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. But it's like open to the public, like donate $1, whatever. But I have this like vision of just like literally bringing people together, folks from the reservation, Indigenous, non-Native folks, and just like moving in our bodies together. So I'm gonna like get that on a consistent basis once a month, and then have a dual purpose of having folks being able to actively help support and empower Indigenous communities.
Love it. If it was up to me, and it's not, but Joe Rogan wouldn't be making millions of dollars, and all of that money would be going to really helpful people like y'all. He appreciates you all taking the time to record with me today, to have recorded with me previously. And it's very grounding and healing for myself to be able to connect with other wonderful humans who are doing the human thing, trying to help other humans. And it's just very nice when you can get lost in all the headlines and all the nonsense to know, hey, there's good people out there doing good stuff. So I appreciate all of you. We're going to have a ton of links in the show notes because all of this work is incredible. And I highly recommend getting in touch with all of it. I know there's stuff that even didn't get plugged here that these wonderful providers are all part of. So we'll have a long show notes recommending a lot of cool stuff. Thank you all for recording with me. Thank you all to our wonderful listeners for tuning in again and being along for 100 episodes. I'll be back next week with another new episode. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.